Hey everyone, welcome back to Crew to Headset, where we chat about all things live event related. I'm Michelle of Prompster, and this is my co host Alex of Ruby and Citri.
Hi, guys.
This week, we're having a conversation about what's billable. I know personally, I have this whispered convo with fellow event workers about when does OT start? When does it end? How should we handle short turnarounds? Should I charge full days on travel? So, to kick things off, Alex, how do you bill your clients? Can you walk us through it?
Sure. So there's two ways that we tend to bill our clients. There's hourly, which I think is an industry standard. A lot of people do hourly, and then we also do day rates once we're on site. But there's no real. It's kind of like the wild wild west out there. There's no real grid out there or that shows you like a range of how to charge or where to charge. And it's just super different how people charge for any of these things. I personally, during pre-production, only charge standard project fees. Think of it more like a bucket of hours that we bill against. And there is no set time frame other than usual standard workday, like a 9 to 5, with occasional night and weekend work as needed for the project. Now, of course, it does go into OT in a single day if it becomes ridiculous hours and it's continuous throughout the project. And we'll speak up and charge it but for the most part, this model works for us. Sometimes you get those clients that are very much on top of you for hourly work, and those tend to be not such lasting relationships for us. Now, when you get on site, that's another ballgame. One of the big things I'm always confirming with others on site is when to start and stop for the day, mainly on a travel day. I'm sure you've experienced this yourself. If you got up and out of your door at 4 a.m. to catch a 7 a.m. flight, I personally would charge the moment I leave, since I have to be there at the airport like one and a half to 2 hours early. And I'm also 45 minutes from the airport, so that becomes a very long travel day, even if it's for like a 2 hour flight somewhere. Now that impacts your entire travel day. OT if you are also expected to work that day. So I'm charging from 4 a.m. and then my OT would start at 10 hours at 2 p.m., right? Which is why for those long haul flights, it's usually just charged as like a full travel day. There are standard rates for OT that I'm not sure everyone is aware of. For me, that doesn't they don't come up unless there are some like really extreme working conditions during a show. So when I was taught how to charge for a show, your OT started at like hours 11 through 13. Double time didn't start until 14 plus, until you get an 8 hour turn. So for those who don't know, an 8 hour turn just means that you're going to get 8 hours of sleep or some sort of rest period. If not, the way I was taught, you're going to be in double time until you get that 8 hour rest. So that can equal to double time the entire rest of the next day. So I know you're super familiar with how our days go, and we're sometimes getting up at 5 a.m., getting released at midnight. That turns into a really pretty check at the end of the at the end of the project. But yeah, that's how we were taught to bill, was just those sort of overtime rates. I just had an exchange with another company owner where she did charge a full day rate on top of her double time for the following day. I'd never heard of that. I think you guys call it golden hour or something like that. I thought it was brilliant, and apparently, if it is a standard in some circles. So yeah, we need more clarity overall. So Michelle, what are some of the things you're doing to make it clear to your clients what you are and aren't charging?
All right, so before I even answer that, I just want to agree with you that yes, how to handle OT and the hours at which it starts lacks a lot of clarity, and you're going
Mm-hmm.
to get a different answer really depending on who you talk to. Uh, from your experience, you said that your double time starts at 14 hours, but I've been pushing back on that and starting double time at 12 hours and going from 12 to 16, we'll do double time, and then we'll do that golden hour, which is basically your full day rate until they cut you. So it just seems like sometimes, and it could be because Prompter has a lot of roots in the film, TV production world, and those rules have always been like double time at 12. And that's kind of like filtering into the event space. And I feel like more and more people are saying 12, but I definitely always say 14 as well.
That definitely makes sense for sure.
Yeah, and I think it should start at 12. I mean, I think it's kind of weird that there was this time where like 14 was the kind of standard. Um, but it's interesting to see, especially with how people handle short turns and how they charge for that. My understanding of it was a little bit different than your understanding of what to charge, but it just, I don't know. I wish there were a little bit more clarity surrounding some of these things, because I feel like you said it's the wild wild west as far as how we're approaching it. But to get back to your original question, how I am clarifying things is that I've created a terms and service document that I pretty much send to every client, and that just goes line by line, topic by topic, explaining our terms to clients. This way, if they come back to me about per diem, I can resend them this document and I can let them know what we consider, how we charge for it, before they want to contract out our services. Um,
So, specifically, what are some of the items that are in the document? I know you mentioned a few, but what are some of the more specific items?
yeah, so we go into a lot of detail about our overtime hours and rates, when the overtime actually starts, when golden time starts, short turns. We also talk about how we charge for travel days, what types of things we'll ask for reimbursements on. I try to leave no stone unturned, but it's a living document and you'll always find like a new scenario popping up, like pretty much all the time. But how about you? What are some things that you're sending out to clients before a job?
So, similar to you, we also have a proposal quote system we send out to clients ahead of time so they can ask their questions, understand our conditions, and allow for any negotiating at the top of the show, top of the job prior to us accepting the job. Even sometimes, though, you hit surprises with these processes and their processes, and what they will and won't accept. It's all really a dance. Recently, I had a client who wanted us to submit receipts to be reimbursed instead of just giving us per diem. I thought that was a little ridiculous. I don't have time for that. You don't have time for that. Just I'm I've been hearing this a lot, and I'm just my main thing that I always say is just pay us our full per diem. Just do it.
Yeah, please just pay the full per diem. I've had to do like so much mathing lately with these clients that are like, you can charge this on the travel days and then this on the work days and then this on this. And it's like, dude, I have to now mathify this entire situation when you could just give me that standard rate that
I
you
really
want
don't get it.
from me. I don't understand it either. And I know we've talked about this in previous episodes and it's becoming a trend, and it's just like very, very irritating. And it just makes it a lot harder. It's not. It's like they think that this is the only job that we're billing for, and it's like we have lots of other billing and admin stuff that we have to do, and you making this a lot more complex than it has to be, because catering is apparently part of per diem now. Just yeah. Anyways, we could go on and
I think
on
I
about that.
think one of the other things that I've noticed too is like even just timesheets. Like some clients are even asking for us to like put in our hours to like the minute. It's been a little bit ridiculous. I squash that every time I see it. I will not. I refuse to do timesheets anymore. It's ridiculous. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it.
Yeah,
Just trust like trust that we're doing the job well and giving you the correct hours.
yeah, yeah. It's not a fan. What are some other things in your contracts that you touch on?
So another thing that we stipulate in our contracts is our payment terms. Like when are we going to get paid? We expect net 30 payment terms. More recently, though, like within the last year, we've switched over to a lot of our billing is 50% deposits for projects above 5K, and then anything below 5K, we've been billing upfront. Um, so outside of show work, of course, for show work and on site, those are usually billed in like milestone payments to be mutually beneficial to the agency as well as ourselves. But just changing that over to being like deposits and upfront under 5K has really helped our bottom line and stopped a lot of clients from running out the clock on payments. Now we have a handful of clients that are still like net 60, but that's only because they are a much larger corporation and big bureaucracy, so I get it. And generally, their projects are pretty small. So, and then we outright refuse anything past 60. I think it's ludicrous that people are still accepting like net 90, net, 120. I know, Michelle. you have you have this pain point yourself. So we've also implemented rush fees, abandonment clauses, and we'll start charging late fees soon, as we've been getting some weird ones lately that are hard to pin down for payment. I actually had to threaten somebody today for small claims court. It was great. So anyway, Michelle, what do you think should be a standard in the industry that currently has a lot of vagueness or different rules?
So I just want to touch on what you just said about the 90, net 90, because you saw that binge. Um, yeah, I have some clients who are net 90 and above, and they absolutely refuse to even have the conversation with me. And it's like every time I bring it up, they just steamroll right past it. And unfortunately, I can't really do much about it because we've had a long-standing relationship. But it's definitely not something I understand, especially since there are laws in certain states that do stipulate,
I was just going to
especially in New
say,
York State, there are freelancer laws that do stipulate 30-day payments. So it always boggles my mind how some of these companies are able to skirt around the 30-day
yeah.
payment, which I think is very much the standard. And
Hmm.
that's what I try to pay the people that work for me. I try to get them paid within 30 days, and that's always my goal, but it always does make it a little more complicated when there are clients that don't seem to want to follow those rules.
I just don't get it. Like, we're a very small company. We have 8 people. We're not running, rolling in the dough. But we still manage to pay our people, our freelancers and contractors within 15 to 20 days. That's our goal, at least net 30 for sure. And we generally don't contract anybody unless we can cover their expenses and their time to go on site for us, to do work for us. I mean, we're not contracting people unless we know that the money's going to be there. So for these larger corporations and companies, I just don't get it.
I am I am right there with you. I am not quite sure what is causing this problem, but it's not great when you have folks that work for you that really kind of rely on that payment consistency. And but anyways, I digress. Something that I think that should have a little bit more clarification on top of everything else we've talked about is probably travel days. I know over the last couple of years, I've really put my foot down and said travel days are going to be paid in full, and they're also going to include the gear rental. For what we do a lot of gear rentals that could be, especially where we've been traveling a lot with these presidential kits. I've also do computer kits, and I feel like those should all be personally, I think every day that they're on site or in travel paid, but I do get some pushback or I get some clarification from other people who say, oh, no, no, I'm only doing it on show days, the charges, or I'm only doing it on a weekly rental. So even if it's on site for like a week, I'm only going to charge that client like 3 or 4 days. Personally, I really feel like every day that equipment is not being able to be used on something else should be a day that is considered a rental. I don't know why we're cutting breaks to these big production companies. It makes zero sense to me. And I've given them this great deal on these rentals. I don't know how you feel about it. I
I
don't know how much rental you're doing, but to me, it's like, really, you can't pay the rental, yet you can pay for this $500,000 event?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that's really crazy. I think it's just purely business, right? Like if you are taking inventory, your computers, your gear out of your stock room to send it off with somebody, you can no longer rent that gear to another company. So therefore, you're not able to make money on a travel day if they're traveling with the person to get to your show. You should be charging for that day.
Yeah, so I just don't want to feel like I'm having to give these large production companies and clients, and I I want to maintain good relationships with everybody, but at the same time I'm not quite sure why we're being penny pinchers on some of this stuff. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think we all know and we're all aware that the budgets for these events are a lot more than what we're charging at the end of the day. I think we all know that the numbers being tossed around for some of these events are a quarter of a million, half a million, a couple $1 million. So whether I'm charging 2,000 or $5,000 for an equipment rental, I'm not quite sure where I'm breaking the bank and why it should be a big deal. I mean, I can't use this gear on another job now because I have it either in transit or it's just sitting there. So for me, I'm actually the one taking the hit just to give you a deal. I don't know. To me, it's just a weird dynamic, and I don't know. Maybe you have some thoughts on it.
No, I mean, I totally agree with you. I know, and this is also another topic where, not another topic, but another place where we just don't really have a lot of clarity on what can be charged. Even I know that there's a couple of graphics people on the graphic side. I can speak to that where we're doing weekly rates rentals. And then there's other people who charge for two computers and bring a third on the side as just like a gift to these clients. There's other people who bring like whole DSANs, or like I hope I said that right, guys. You can hurt me in the comments, but but I think like the Q light. Like there's people who
Yeah.
full on bring their own Q lights, their own wires, their own like um little machines that I can't remember what it's called, but that network everything together so that you're only punching one button to manipulate six computers. I think that's incredible that you can do it. But you should be charging for that. And I know a lot of people who don't charge for any of that extra stuff. And that's crazy to me.
That's it. Yeah. I think if anything that we walk away from this is that we need to be charging for these things. We shouldn't be just giving our services away. We're
Absolutely.
devaluing what we do when we do that. And
Yeah,
what we're doing is an important essential part of these events. And for
of
us,
course.
it's important that we're getting compensated fairly for bringing all this stuff. We've paid for it. We've invested in it. We should be,
Right.
you know, uh,
Well, I want to bring us back to the travel day though, because I
yeah.
know that there's another thing that has been happening more recently, which is like companies asking for half day travel. It's really awful when
Yeah.
I have to like talk to these clients about, hey, I'm not doing that, and um, you're paying for a full day. I know I don't care how entitled that comes off. I cannot work on the plane. I cannot work at the airport comfortably. Even if you have status, it's just not I cannot work on the plane. I cannot work at the airport comfortably. It's not your office, it's not your home. I can't get on any of my calls to address other clients. I can, but it's like nearly impossible to really schedule that during travel. So it should be paid. What are your thoughts?
Oh, hands down. I think I've pretty much said this. Full day on a travel. I don't care if it's like the state over.
Yeah.
It's still, I can't. What else am I doing on that day? Am I going to go pick up another job and then like, no, it's not possible. And even
Mhm.
if it is possible, it's none of the client's business if you can make it work. But most of the time, you're not going to, and you don't want to, and you never
Right.
really want to take the last flight out anyways, because God forbid something happens. So you're always
Right.
trying to plan around the job that you're on because that's what's most important. So at
Yeah, and you're also technically on call when you're traveling for these clients. Like, who's to say you were given a whole travel day, and then it's happened to me plenty of times where I touch down, get into my room by 9 a.m., and the client's like having an emergency, and they're like, "Hey, I need you to come down and work on this right now." I had all of my plans to just be a travel day, and all of a sudden it's, "Oh, I need you right now." So you're
yeah.
on call.
So actually, it's really funny we bring this up. I had this company, they're a pretty big company. I'm not going to name names. They basically said if your flight gets canceled when you're on the way to the gig, you can pretty much, like, you're not going to get paid. I don't know what you think about that.
No.
Yeah, I was like, what? And that was a big sticking point. I was like, yeah, well, we can't be responsible if, your flight gets canceled.
No, you still get paid at least the day. You still get paid.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were pretty much like, well, if you can't get here, you can't get you can't get paid.
Which is so funny because I've had other situations where they had us travel. I recently actually like 6 months ago, I had two operators go out for me to New York City from, well, one was local to New York and the other one was coming from Phoenix. And they landed in New York, and that's when they realized that the show was canceled. Like that, not canceled, that the show didn't need them anymore. And then they were trying to push back and say, "Oh, well, we'll use those hours another time." I'm like,
No,
my operators are already there. Like that
no,
doesn't make sense.
you can't do that. Not when they're there. You pay them for, yeah, like
Yeah,
they
they
turn down other
canceled.
stuff to be
Oh
there.
my god, they canceled the hotels for them
No.
because they were like, "Oh, well, yeah, we just found out today that everything's canceled." So, well, not that the show was canceled, but like those two positions were canceled.
Gotcha.
I'm like, well, you still got to pay for their time. Like
Yeah.
you said, hey, A, B, and C, you have work these next 3 days, and all of a sudden like the day of, you're canceling. You still got to pay the whole rate. I'm sorry, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's nuts. Also, another thing that I think we should all start collectively thinking about is clients that want us to work on Sundays and standard, and this is for US workers. I mean, I don't know what other countries do, but working on Sundays and any standard US holidays that we're sacrificing that we could be spending with our friends and family, I think we should be charging overtime, time and a half. What do you think?
I'm already counting all of the people rolling their eyes and saying, "Oh, these entitled millennials."
No, I
I
don't think
totally,
so at all. I mean, these
I
are days that are non-traditional work days that you're asking us to come in and do work or travel
yeah,
on even. And
I
frankly,
totally.
I mean, like we have lives too. I don't think that should, you know,
Yeah, I
be
totally agree with you. We're already charging a really, a higher, not a really high rate, but a higher rate as freelancers, businesses, than the normal worker. But thinking back at the ludicrous amount of times I've given up a holiday or family time to make edits for an inconsiderate client, was it really worth it? Um, I'm sure, like a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, we're pretty spoiled in the
Well,
U.S."
look, you're saying we're charging more, but at the same time, we're also entrepreneurs and business owners, and those are additional expenses that we
Of
have to
course.
consider ourselves. We have to pay for our own healthcare. We have
Hmm.
our own overhead. We have our own business setups.
But I 100% agree. We're already charging a higher rate as freelancers and businesses than the normal worker. But thinking back at the amount of times I've given up a holiday or family time to make edits for an inconsiderate client, I don't think it was really worth it. You know, outside people's lives outside of work really matter, and they should matter more than work. I mean, there's value taken away when you ask someone to work over the course of a major holiday or a weekend because you said yes to the client. Personally, I think I do an okay job navigating those requests and putting my foot down where I have to. And of course, there's going to be times where you just kind of have to dig in and get it done. But as an industry, I think we really need to rethink how much we say yes, and especially for no additional pay.
That's our, traditionally those spaces of time were meant for personal time. And I understand we're in an unconventional industry that requires us to work on weekends and holidays, etc. But we should be holding these companies to the same standards that a traditional, office worker would do, as far as the fact that they probably get time and a half or some sort of additional benefit. So that's something I've actually put into my terms and conditions. Any sort of like US holiday, I say that the operators are going to get time and a half. And if it's worked on a Sunday or travel on a Sunday, same thing goes.
That's pretty awesome. I haven't considered that yet. I do know that I just say we're not working during the holidays. In general, we just say no, or we just I mean, there's only the way that we work. Like, there's only about 8 or 9 holiday days that we're not working throughout the year. 365 days, and we just say no to 8 or 9.
Yeah, I mean that's valid too. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't
however you
know why
want to
that's
work
an
it.
issue.
I don't think there's a right or wrong. You just want to make sure that you're like advocating for yourself or for the people that are working for you, and just making sure that we're just treated like everyone else.
Yep, for sure. And I think as far as billable, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of comments of like other things that people bill for, and I would love to hear
Sure.
about it.
Yeah.
I want people to comment on this one because it would help to understand what people are charging. I don't even need to know what you're charging, although
Yeah.
that's another episode. But but I would love to know like what your what your line items on your proposals look like what are the packages that you put together. Um, Not even for my own benefit, but just it's interesting to see how vast um, that market is.
I think we're going to get a million different answers because I feel like everyone's doing it. But that's great. I mean, it's great that people are coming up with their own ways of doing things, but on the other end of the spectrum, it would be nice if there was a little bit um, more standards, I guess you could say, because everyone's just kind of like making it up. And because of that, I think some people are benefiting more over others, or they're maybe disadvantaging others by coming up with these other ways of doing it. And then that company gets it into their mindset that that's how it's always done. So when you come in with the way that you do it and it's different, it starts to create this weird conflict. So
Yeah.
it would be great if we had more conversations about this and just let it all out in the open,
Hmm.
and if we all can kind of come up with what we think is the best tier of doing things that advocates for all of us better, instead of some people doing certain things this way and then benefiting more, and other people doing it down here and then undercutting, and then there's this whole like undercutting race that I know we all know about, and we know some people
100%.
are playing to their advantage or whatever. It would just be great if we all kind of
Yeah. My
not
last
necessarily like unionized, but like collectively came up with things.
Well, you know me. I don't want union at
I
all.
understand. I mean, I'm a little bit more on the other side of that
Yes, for
spectrum,
sure.
but I feel like, yeah, if we the more we share, I think the better off we'll be as a
Of
community
course.
of event workers. It's my thought
Yeah.
on it.
So yeah, I think we've talked this topic to exhaustion, and we are still probably missing a ton of stuff as far as what's billable and what other people are kind of adding in there. And I would love to hear from everybody who's listening in. Um, like give us your comments, like let us know what we're missing, what didn't we touch. We can always expand on this topic at another time. Maybe there's an expert out there that has been doing this for 40 years and wants to wants to give us like bullet points of like all the things that we should be billing for. I think it would be super helpful in general just to have some sort of um, list of things that would make sense for both graphics, AV,
And so,
um, and prompting. So please let us know your thoughts. As always, we really love talking about our industry. We love it. And we want to hear more from our audience. Thanks so much.
thank you. Come back soon. I'm like half in the frame. Hopefully this hasn't been like getting light